Have you heard about Anchor? It's the easiest way to make a podcast, and it's the way I'm making my podcast right now. And it's free. They have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. And Anchor is going to distribute your podcast to all the major important places you would ever want, like Spotify and Apple and so many more places. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything that you need to make a podcast all in one place. I love it. It's so simple. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Hello, friends, and welcome to the Intuitive Psychologist podcast. I'm Lindsay Pandya, and I am a licensed clinical psychologist who's been in the mental health field for over 15 years. I am so grateful to be part of the mental health field, especially since in this day and age, mental health is really coming online as to how important it is to not only have it, but to have the conversations and normalize what many of us all go through. We all, from time to time, and sometimes for far too long, struggle with our mental health. The one piece, though, about mental health that I feel is missing so much is the conversation around spirituality and how important it can be to be tapped into the spiritual side of you to help with your mental health. Thankfully, I feel like in this current climate, people are having a spiritual awakening at an ever-increasing rate, which can be jarring and scary and confusing, and you may even think that you're losing your mind a bit. So my intention with this podcast is to bridge the gap between spirituality and mental health, and I want to bridge the gap through normalizing not only mental illness, mental health issues, but to also normalize typical spiritual awakening symptoms, give you some guidance as to how to manage a spiritual awakening. I bring on guests to help talk about different modalities to connect you in to your spiritual nature. And I want to do all of this with the intention to help you grow and to know that you are not alone and that there's help out there for you. So please join me on this journey through my own self-discovery with mental health problems, with challenging life events, and going through my spiritual awakening and continued spiritual growth. Join me and my friends as we have these interesting and sometimes very difficult conversations, not only about mental health, but also about a spiritual journey. So welcome, friends, and enjoy. Welcome back, my friends, to the Intuitive Psychologist podcast. Today, I wanted to talk about shadow work. I find that shadow work is one of those terminologies that we throw around a lot in the woo-woo community. And we often wonder, what the hell are we even talking about, right? Like, what is shadow work? And luckily, some folks will actually say out loud, though quietly, what does this mean and how do we do it? So I figured, well, why not talk about this? Especially since, I'm going through it right now, and I figured what better time to talk about shadow work than when I'm actually fucking in the middle of it. So what is shadow work? Shadow work was actually coined by the psychiatrist Carl Jung, and he worked directly with Sigmund Freud. They are the first forefathers of psychology and psychoanalysis. And he ends up being, lo and behold, I find out decades later, that he actually ends up being one of the most woo-woo, spiritually out there kind of scientist, psychiatrist in our field, especially in the time that he came up, which was in the early 1900s. And so I highly recommend, if anyone is interested in pursuing a degree in psychology and you want to have more of a spiritual twist to it, definitely look into Carl Jung. You'll find some very interesting stuff. So Carl Jung states, quote, "Shadow is that hidden, repressed, for the most part inferior and guilt-laden personality whose ultimate ramifications reach back into the realm of our animal ancestors," end quote. And shadow really comes from one of a few spaces. One is through our personal experiences, often in childhood, which are very difficult and sometimes traumatic. Not always traumatic, but sometimes. Also, it can be passed down from our family by either sharing stories, sharing beliefs or viewpoints and fears along the way. And there's also another way in which it can come through generational trauma. And so what do I mean by that, generational trauma? I probably have talked about this in a different podcast episode, but I'm going to talk about it again. And mind you, I am not the best at remembering specific details. I'm really good at general concepts, but not so much detail. So if you're a details kind of person, this may be cringeworthy. But there is some research that came out recently where they were working with rats, and they would put rats through a maze and say, put a piece of carrot at different points of the maze. And every time that the rat would come up and start eating the carrot, the rat would get shocked. They would set up a different maze, again, put a piece of carrot randomly in the maze, rat goes up, eats the carrot, gets shocked. They do this over and over and over again until the rat pairs carrot with danger. And the danger may be that they think that they're going to die or that it's painful, but they look at the carrot and they go, oh, hell no, and they just avoid the carrot from now on. That's when the researchers know, okay, now they have paired carrots with danger. They breed the rats twice at least. They may have bred it beyond that. So now they've got the grandchildren of these rats that went through this maze, ate the carrot, got shocked, decided at one point after doing it enough times, this ain't for me. Now this grandchild comes through this maze. Now, mind you, these are rats. They don't tell each other, hey, watch out for the carrot. It's fucked. Don't do it, right? And my guess is, as researchers, they usually will then also, make sure that the rats are not in the vicinity to, go meep, 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 and then transmute through, meep, meeps, like avoid the fucking carrot. So anyway, so the grandchildren now are put through a maze, and at random spots, carrots are put in the maze. And what they notice is the grandchildren, at least, of these rats will avoid the carrot. No other reason that they should have avoided this carrot. Carrots are something that rats eat all the time, so they can safely come to the conclusion that the DNA makeup of the grandparent rat changed and was re-encoded to say carrots are dangerous, right? So that gets passed on. Now, if we think about children, and let's just pretend that now the rats are children, and this child comes to life and they are deathly afraid of carrots, and the parents are like, what the fuck is wrong with Johnny? Why is he afraid of carrots? Well, maybe Johnny's grandparents, who these people may or may not have known had a fear of carrots, now has this fear of carrots because it's in their DNA. The cool thing with shadow work is that you, by doing the shadow work, you actually can change the DNA back. So it's not hopeless that, we pass this trauma on through our DNA and then you're fucked. It's you pass the trauma on through the DNA. You can then transmute it through therapy, shadow work, lots of other different ways to release trauma. and then your DNA is changed again, right? So we change our DNA through the work that we're doing. So all hope is not lost. So shadow work is important because you'll know you need to do it when you notice that there are similar patterns coming up in your life over and over again. So some examples of some things that could be considered your shadow could be toxic relationships. Like, let's say you kind of date the same type of partner over and over and over and over and over again. Maybe the fears that you have, the underlying fears. Chronic pain and disease can be linked to shadow work or your shadow. Perfectionism, sexual issues, low self-esteem, issues with work or your boss, financial issues, and childhood problems. So why do you need to do shadow work? So we do shadow work so that we can uncover those hidden parts of ourselves that mess our lives up in our relationships, progress in our life, and overall happiness. We want to transmute the shadows, bringing them into the light so that we can look at it and help to heal around the shadow. So another way to think of your shadow is sort of that looping tape within your head telling you about who you are as a person, or who the world is around you, or what the world is around you and how the world views you. Oftentimes this is created in your childhood and then you repeat it in your adulthood experiences. So the question is, how do you do shadow work, right? That's the biggest question. Now that we know a little bit about what the shadow is, it's the hidden parts. It is the unconscious or subconscious parts of our brain. So the conscious is you being aware of your thoughts and your feelings, your day-to-day occurrences. Your subconscious is, you could probably bring it up, if you put a little focus on it. It may just be playing a little bit in the background and a little bit in the foreground. It's kind of right in between the two. And the unconscious is the things that kind of come out sideways. Things where you think, I got my shit together. And then you scream at somebody that cuts you off over and over and over again. And that seems to be your problem is, I yell at people who cut me off. Well, why the fuck, right? Why do you yell at people that cut you off? Or you think, well, I'm fine. My childhood was good enough. And yet the partners that you attract are aloof, emotionally unavailable. Maybe they leave you. Maybe they cheat on you. There's some sort of emotional lacking intimacy sort of feel to it. And you're like, well, everything's fine but that, right? So how do you then address this? The great thing about shadow work is that oftentimes all you have to do is just shine the light on the shadow and it will go away. Kind of like when you have a big fear and you face it and you realize, oh, the shadow that looked like a monster was actually just a beetle with the light like on it in a weird way that made it look really big on the wall. And it was just a beetle. It wasn't a tarantula, wasn't a dinosaur, it wasn't whatever. It just, you have to look at it to realize, okay, you're bigger than what you're afraid of or what your thoughts and beliefs are. So, in other words, you have to make your unconscious or subconscious actually be conscious. So you have to bring back the hidden parts of you into the forefront so that you can look at it. So it's really crucial that when you're doing the shadow work that you are kind and gentle to yourself. Shadow work is a process and it's going to take most likely several steps or a period of time to really tackle some of this stuff. Now, shadow work can be done situational, and as you tackle each situation, it will chip away deeper and deeper at the overarching shadow. But for most part, shadow work is going to be more than just a one-time situation. So when you're truly, truly tackling your shadows, then there's going to usually be a lot of layers that you've got to uncover. Each layer, it's going to get you closer to happiness, peace, contentment, your authentic true nature, your authentic self, closer into your natural essence. And it's going to be easier for the most part. The work may get easier. It may take shorter amounts of time to sort of work through the emotions and get through it. But just know that oftentimes, especially like traumas and big pieces of your personality that are hidden in the shadows, it's probably going to take some time. So be kind and gentle and be patient. Trust me when I say that this is definitely not the kind of work that you want to just rip the Band-Aid off and be like an open sore walking around this earth, because fuck, you're opening yourself up to a lot of shit. So peel it off a little layer at a time, because honestly, if you go too fast, if you're mean to yourself, if you're, critical, if you dive in too deep and just go for the jugular, you could re-traumatize yourself. It could trigger yourself, and that's just really not necessary. That's not what you need to do this shadow work. So let's talk about some steps on how to do shadow work. I think one of the best tools for shadow work is journaling. I know it's one of those things that none of us like to do it, and I'm so sorry, but it really is important. There is a critical component to taking your thoughts out of your head and putting it on paper. They've actually have lots of research to validate that this is a piece of the transmutation from the head onto paper. It's almost as if you were like literally pulling your thoughts out, place them on the paper, and then they get to go away. So journaling is so important, and I'm so sorry. It's kind of like when people are like, well, the first step to connecting with your spirit team is meditation. It fucking is, folks. There's a reason why people say the same two things over and over again. Meditation and journaling, so important with healing work. So when you take the time and you put the effort forward of putting your thoughts onto paper, you're often getting your subconscious and your unconscious thoughts and beliefs to bubble up to the surface so that you can actually put them down on paper and let it go. One thing that I often say about writing, especially when it comes to writing with the purpose of healing or getting things out, you can make it a ritual. And after you do all these steps, you can burn it, you can rip it up, you can throw it away, you can bury it in the ground, you can do a whole grieving let go ceremony. You can light a candle and say a prayer. You can do whatever you want after you have done this to truly let it go, folks. So just something to think about when you're writing, that you can make it into an entire ritual. So some questions that you can start to work with to get the thoughts kind of coming up is, you can ask yourself, what is a big mental block for me right now? And then just see what comes up and write. Whatever comes up, don't judge it, just write it. Another question you could write about as a prompt is, what am I being called to heal at this time? Or what patterns keep re-emerging in my life? How about, what kind of person bothers me the most and why? What is something from my childhood that seems to be replaying over and over again? So you can use these as prompts. You can write answers to all of these, but what I would do is kind of like automatic writing. Let your hand flow. I really do prefer writing, but that just may be a me generational kind of thing. So if you are better at typing, then go ahead, by all means type. But what I really want to encourage you when you're journaling is to let it flow, whatever comes to your mind, even if it's, this is the dumbest question ever, I don't know why I'm doing this, blah, 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 nothing, 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 because literally nothing's coming up. Keep writing. Eventually your unconscious, subconscious mind will come percolating up into that space and come out. So when you are actually journaling, it may be best to wait until you're kind of already in an emotionally overwhelmed state, feeling a lot of intense feelings. And to be honest, even if you're not there and you're like, well, it feels right, like I'm tapped into my intuition, I feel like my spirit team is encouraging me to take this step, and I don't have a lot of intense emotions, that's okay. Maybe write these questions down, see if anything comes up. If it doesn't, then just be patient. It's kind of like when you first start tapping in to talk to your spirit team, and you're not always going to get the answers through them verbally talking to you, right? So hearing their voice in your head. Oftentimes you will start to connect with them through, and this is going to sound psychotic, through messages from movies or TV shows, through conversations that you have with somebody where you're like, normally we don't talk about this kind of thing, and all of a sudden they're answering the question I had posed on paper. So just be open to it. Doesn't mean that you have lost your mind. Just be open that it may come that way, and different clues that may come up in your day-to-day life may also come in through your dreams. So if you have vivid dreams or you remember your dreams, maybe a clue will be in your dreams, or the answers will be in your dreams. So just be aware of that. The next step really is to begin to connect in with your emotions to that situation that's going on right now that's making you feel like, okay, I need to do some shadow work around this, along with whatever the shadow work is bringing up for you. When you notice the feeling, pause. And I want you to truly feel in your body, in every cell of your body, what that feeling is. So some things that I like to do if I'm struggling with really feeling the feeling that's coming up for me is I'll turn on music that may elicit that feeling. Sometimes if I'm really struggling, I may turn on a show or a movie that kind of brings forth a memory of what is going on in my life. So if it's a relationship issue, I may put on a really sad love movie, right? One that's going to make me feel like I'm unlovable and I'm never going to find the guy and blah, blah, blah. If it's something where it's family related, then maybe I find something that triggers those like similar kind of family dynamics that I'm dealing with in a movie or a show to really start to bring those feelings forth for me. Now, granted, I am a Pisces, and so that may be more of a me thing, that kind of helps to pull the emotions out. Might not be true for everybody. So play around with it to find out, how do you normally feel your feelings? Like what usually brings it up for you? Maybe it's having the memory come up and you just sitting with the memory for a while. Thinking in the future of something bad that could happen that might trigger that emotion, to just tap into it so you can start to feel it. Then ask yourself, is there a feeling deeper than that feeling? And keep asking that question over and over again until you feel like you've really gotten to the core of what that feeling, emotion is. This feeling or emotion that is connected directly to the shadow. So maybe you are annoyed that your boss always talks down to you, right? And you're like, I seem to always have the same fucking boss. No matter where I go, no matter what job I do, I always have a boss talking down to me as if I'm dumb and I'm stupid. And that just irritates me, right? Well, what's below the irritation? Well, to be honest, I'm actually kind of pissed off, but I don't feel comfortable allowing myself to be mad at an authority figure. Well, why? Go deeper than that. Okay. So I guess there's a part of me that feels like maybe I am stupid, or I'm not stupid, but I'm fucking sick and tired of people talking to me like I'm stupid. I'm not stupid. But why does that bother you? Okay. Why does that bother me? Why does that bother me? What is a feeling that comes up? Ooh, I'm feeling that in my stomach, right? So if you are connected to your chakras, you might go, ooh, okay, I'm feeling it in my stomach. Take some deep breaths and sit with it. Okay, I'm feeling it in my stomach. It's like a knot in my stomach. Okay. What feeling is that associated with? Well, it makes me pissed and angry. We already said that. Yeah, okay. So now what? Why? Oh. I don't think I'm very smart. And the reason I don't really think that I'm very smart is because I was told a lot by my father, who was like an authority figure, like a boss when I was a child, that I wasn't very smart, that I wasn't capable of much. And well, I'm fucking tired of that shit, right? So now you're tapping into your power center, your I am. Right? So is there any shame linked to that, or is it just anger? Does it stop at anger? Well, maybe the shame is, I have done some things that were kind of dumb sometimes, and I don't know, maybe I am stupid, right? So ask yourself over and over again, is there something underneath that? Is there something even deeper? And often when I know I've hit it, it's like an aha moment. And I can see that in my clients where it like clicks all of a sudden. You're like, boom, you got it. Now, I may sense that because of that intuitive piece of me as the therapist, where I can hear them talking out loud, and then I get that aha. But try to find your own aha moment where you go, that's it. That is the core. We're done. We're good. And then do that. Okay. Another way to think of this journaling is to think of it as if you're purging everything that you can onto the page. And so you're getting your thoughts out, you're getting your emotions out, you're getting all of it out. So write down all the feelings that come up for you. Write down all of the thoughts, all of the memories, everything that you can look at. Write this all down. Next, ask yourself, is there a specific memory that you tie to this emotion? Is there a specific time of your life that this emotion is linked to? If it's a belief that you're working through, then ask yourself where this belief came from and who do you think of when you think of this belief? Could it be society, a parent, a teacher? You could even ask yourself, who would agree with you about that belief that you're holding? So that's a good way to try to figure out where the belief came from if it's a little bit of a struggle. So if this wasn't done in the tapping into the emotion piece, it's really important to just try to find this space. When you look back into your childhood and you look back as to where this originated from, this could be where you could do some inner child work, which I'll do an episode later on about inner child work, which kind of like with shadow work, I think that this work is actually best done with somebody that can go through it with you, because one of the things about doing some of this work on our own, kind of like reading a self-help book or reading articles or a blog or Instagram posts, there's this level of accountability that happens when you have somebody on the other side kind of walking you through this, that can be objective, knows what they're doing, and can kind of call you on your shit if you need a little prompting, a little bit further help, or to go things a little bit deeper, right? So inner child work, I kind of feel that way too. That could kind of be a little traumatizing, but again, things that you can probably do for the most part on your own. So when it comes to the shadow work, it could be very helpful to sort of dig in and find, where did this come from? Oftentimes, as humans, we want stories to explain, create a pattern and logical, linear connection of dots to say, oh, okay, I get it. And to be honest, I have seen lots of clients that when we do go and find the source of where did this originate from, there's this deeper understanding, and that understanding helps create a deeper healing. Not everybody, but many people. So let's take, for example, looking at a parent who may have some fears around germs, right? And that parent was always like obsessively cleaning up after you as a child, almost wrapped you in a bubble before going out into the world, used hand sanitizer all the time, like just like way too much, caused you anxiety. Now you've got this belief that you're going to get a germ or a disease and that you're going to die from it and something bad's going to happen, right? And so you're like, fuck, right? I get panicked if I'm not washing my hands 17 times, if I don't check things multiple times to make sure that, everything's been properly cleaned. And you do this work and you go, oh yeah, no wonder it was my mom who sort of started this, right? Now you can realize this isn't me. I'm not a bad person, which is often what comes with the shadow, is this belief that there's something flawed or wrong with us. And when we can sort of point to the originating source of a lot of things, we can go, oh, okay, got it. So my mom had this issue. I wonder why, right? So maybe you know a little bit about her history, maybe you don't. But let's say you do. And you know that her mother died at a very young age from some disease that could have been prevented had there been cleanliness or something done, right? And so for your mom to cope with her mother's death, she developed this anxiety and this obsessive compulsive behavior and passed it on to you accidentally. Well, now you not only have compassion for yourself, because it's not your fault that you freak out about germs, you can also have compassion for your mom, that she had a really difficult situation and did the best she could to manage it and wasn't consciously aware that her problem that she had for herself ended up being passed to you through her actions, through her words, and through her behaviors. So I think it can be helpful. But I also want to point out that it's not always necessary to have a story that links to your emotion or belief. There's times where it is important to know it, and if that's the case, it'll come up. Even if it doesn't come up right away, it'll eventually come up. But don't stress out if you don't have one. Just let it be. And if it's something that you need to know, it'll come up. So this shadow that you're dealing with could simply be that it's a past life situation. So not something that you're actually personally experienced in this lifetime. So maybe it's a past life trauma or traumas that is coming back up in this lifetime so that you can transmute it, learn from it, and move forward. It may be that it's the trauma that's passed on from your ancestors, kind of like I talked about with the rat experiment. So if you think about grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren of slaves, children, grandchildren of Holocaust survivors, oftentimes they will have trauma passed on from their ancestors, right? Again, like the rats. And they actually went through a traumatic experience. And even though we may see in 2020 Well, there isn't a Holocaust going on right now, so why are you freaked out? Or, you're not a slave. I don't understand. Well, it's like, no, granted, world's also not fucking perfect either. Like, we have made lots of strides in a lot of ways, and in a lot of ways we have barely moved the mark on a lot of things. So both are true, right? Both are true. These traumatic events are not currently happening in this lifetime. It is also true that systemic issues are still going on that oppress both Jewish people, Black people, women, gay, lesbian, queer, transgender, Middle Eastern, Native American, Asian, like you name it. Pretty much everybody to some degree, has some potential ancestral stuff being passed down that needs to be transmuted. So it could simply be that trauma is passed on. So you may not have a story because you're not experiencing it directly, but your body, your DNA is saying, yes, there is something wrong. We're trying to keep you alive, help you to survive, right? Because that is the name of the biological game, is survival. So, again, sometimes it's important to know the story and it can be helpful, and other times it's really not important to know the story. I truly believe that if it's something that you need to know, it will become apparent to you, and if it's not something you need to know, it's not important, then don't stress about it. Your team will make sure you know it if you need to. Just don't stress, right? You don't need to add more pressure to this process. So, another thing that I really like to do, like me personally, this is kind of the way that I do my own personal shadow work. I like to look at the thing that causes me the most pain or is the biggest fear that I have, and then look at it in the most exaggerated version I can possibly come up with. I like to sort of throw myself a pity party, just worry to the nth degree, wallow deeply in whatever problem I have. If I'm like, fuck, this is a repeating pattern, this is beyond just, a minor situation that I'm going to be over in a moment, then yeah, I really prefer to go all the way to the nth degree. So, say for instance, I am worried about being highly in debt and an unemployed psychologist for the rest of my life. Then I may fast forward my life 5-10 years from now and see myself working as a waitress, because that's what I used to do. So that would be a skill that I could fall back on yet again. And see myself working as a waitress and maybe not being able to pay my bills. Maybe I'm on the verge of being homeless, desolate, I'm unloved, whatever story that I need to tell myself to kind of bring up the most intense emotions and the most extreme timeline for that fear or belief or even emotion that I've got. And so when I do this, I will wallow in this emotion and story, and I will do this with purpose and intent, and that's to face my biggest fear and then conquer it. Now, it could take me sleeping on it at night. It could take me a day or two to really work through it, work it out. But for the most part, to be honest, when I've really done this, when I've really thrown myself into this work, really felt the intense feelings, cried my fucking eyes out, and usually the ugly tears where the snot is just dripping out of your nose, just gross, just taking a pause, because I try sometimes to do comedic moments, but I have been feeling sick for the last few days, and it was one of those situations where, same thing, it was like the snot was dripping out my nose, and I was like, really, dude? Like, I can't, like, it was that bad. I didn't even realize that, like, it was coming out on its own. And it made me think of the Garbage Pail Kids, and my name, the way you spell it with an A, it was Leaky Lindsay. And so Leaky Lindsay, if you Google that, you'll see snot everywhere, which kind of now actually is poetic if you think about it, because me being Pisces and being highly emotional and empathic, I feel a lot. Feeling is not hard for me. So the leaky Lindsay snot coming out, I always just thought of like as a cold, but now that I think about it, shit, mine's being blown as I speak right now, that it actually probably was actually connected into my emotions, that when I cry and really fucking tap in, man, it's coming out all areas of the face. It's just gross and nasty. So anyway, Google Leaky Lindsay Garbage Pail Kids. You'll see exactly what I was talking about. That's what I look like when I do my shadow work. I ugly cry for maybe 20 minutes, maybe an hour or two. But to be honest, folks, I swear to God, when I do this, I almost always feel better shortly after. And definitely by the morning, I'm feeling good again. It's kind of like, when you're drank too much, room is spinning, you feel awful, you just want it to go away. So you like crawl into the bathroom, stick a couple fingers down your throat, trigger warning, I'm so sorry. But I mean, I do this, right? And you make yourself throw up to get the alcohol out of your system so that you can feel better faster. Like, it really is like that. That's kind of what this shadow work is you are forcing yourself to purge all of these emotions out at once. It's uncomfortable. It doesn't feel good in the moment, but man, you're going to feel a lot better, a lot faster. So, I also do believe, like in a more woo-woo sense, that when you do this, when you face your biggest fear, you're actually jumping off the timeline for that to be a possibility. Now, have I tried that enough to be able to say that with confidence? No, but that is kind of how I feel, because almost never has any of my biggest fears ever come true. It's always been what's in my head is way worse than what's actually reality is going to manifest for me. But I do kind of feel like, if you face it, then that timeline probably isn't going to come true because you did that work. So another reason why it may be that you're kind of jumping this timeline is because you're looking at all the possibilities. And then you're also looking at all the possible solutions to the problem. And finally, it may be that you're looking at the problem, worst absolute case scenario, and eventually a piece of you kicks in and goes, okay, I can handle it. Maybe it's going to suck for a while, but I can handle it. I'm going to get back on my feet. I'm going to do this. I'm going to figure it out by doing that. And finally, you're tapping back into your empowerment. That is huge. So the final step, I think, that's really important to highlight for shadow work is the positive side of this, right? So it's not just that you're feeling it. It's not just that you're looking at worst case scenario. It's not just that you're making that which is hidden from you into your forefront so it no longer fucks your life up. But you also kind of want to have that power. You want to feel like this was something moving you forward in a good way. And so I like to sort of end things with positivity. So what's your game plan if this situation were to come true, if this belief was reality, if this emotion never went away, whatever it is? What's your game plan? What are you going to do? Figure out the 3D way to manage this problem. So what I would suggest is also come up with some new ways you would like to believe or feel or move forward. And you can also look at a few different major options that came up for you. Like, so say you went to the absolute worst case scenario, but prior to finally getting to worst case, you maybe had a couple bad also potential scenarios. Take your top 3 worst case scenarios. What would be your game plan? Map it out. Like, literally map it out. Write it down. Write that shit down. How would you manage it? And then find solutions to your problems that you've imagined. Write down positive things. And all of that will give you a map for what to do just in case any of these realities did actually come true, okay? If nothing else, you're just going to have the confidence that no matter what happens, you're going to be able to manage it, okay? Nothing in life is that dire. Even death is not that dire. And what a great segment to let you all into the world of what created my shadow today. Well, it didn't create my shadow. It helped it come out yet again. Because sadly, some of my traumas are the kind that are like the ever unfolding onion, that it's very deep, and each time I do the work it gets a little bit better and a little bit easier, but I haven't mastered it yet, and maybe I never will. Maybe the point is never to master it, but I'm going to keep fucking trying and hoping. So I live in California, and right now California is on its 3rd and most intense wave of COVID that we have seen thus far. The pandemic starting in the early part of this year, I could maybe count on both my hands the amount of people that I knew that either were directly exposed or had somebody really close to them that was exposed or sick with COVID. So maybe 3 handfuls tops for everything. In the last 2 weeks alone, I would say at least half of all of the people I've come in contact with through private practice, through therapy and my personal life, I'd say at least half, and I'm trying to be very conservative here, so I'm not exaggerating. I'd say at least half have been either directly exposed or have somebody very close in their life that are positive with COVID. As you remember, I think it was my last episode or 2 episodes maybe ago, I don't remember, but I talked to you about my lung problem. My lung collapsed, both of them, total of 5 times altogether. And because my lungs have collapsed and because COVID is a very respiratory problem, I've been told by numerous medical professionals that if I come down with COVID, that the chances of a really bad outcome for me are pretty high. My lungs are already compromised and weak. If I was coughing excessively, I believe that, just really bad things could happen. I'd probably collapse my lungs again. Now, I've protected myself in my little home of a bubble pretty well since April, May, something like that. March. Mid-March was when I was granted a temporary ability to work from home for my job. 98% of my job in the prison at that time could be done at home. I was no longer doing direct patient care. I was a suicide prevention coordinator. Meetings and trainings and all that stuff could be done online through like a Zoom meeting or Skype meeting, reports, all that stuff. Everything I could do from home. So since mid-March, I have protected myself in my bubble and have been incredibly diligent to only go to places that I absolutely have to go to. And when I do, I'm masked up, I sanitize, I do everything that I can 6 feet away when possible. Like everything that I can imagine to keep myself safe, I have done. Luckily for me, my job, when I transitioned from the prison into private practice only, everything is online. So I'm fine. It's just myself and my husband. He, thank God, has been doing all of the grocery getting, running errands, all that stuff that he's done for me. So I'd say 95% of this time since mid-March, I have been at home, merely going for walks when the weather's nice, and that is about it since then. I've seen a few people. I had to travel once for an emergency with the family. And aside from that, I've stayed in my bubble. I've stayed away from friends. I've done everything that I possibly can, right? There were times during this pandemic where things were a lot safer and it felt more comfortable to go visit a friend. Sadly, though, more times than not, it always made me nervous because I was like, fuck, man. But still, again, max 3 handfuls. So 15, maybe 15 people, either through private practice or personal life, I had heard of, be indirectly or directly exposed to COVID. So now I'm hearing from so many people left, right, and center how everyone's just getting sick now. Everyone. And I understand that for some folks, it's not a big deal. They get sick. They have some uncomfortable symptoms, intense flu or mild flu or no symptoms at all, and they're fine. And my worry is that I'm one of those very few cases that if I do get it, it could be bad. And I just don't want to take the risk. It's just not worth it to me. I've been hospitalized for lung collapses before. I have clients and people in my life that work in the medical field. So I've heard what it's like when COVID is really bad for people. It's not a joke. You know, just because it doesn't affect everyone the same doesn't mean that it doesn't affect some of those really badly. And I'm in the category to be one of those. So I've heard the stories. I've heard how painful, how lonely it can be to be one of those people. And I have 2 stepsons that are in their very early 20s, right? So think of you in your early 20s and how invincible you felt. Then put on top of that, not only the invincibility that you believe you have, but they're also in the military. And their military experience so far has been that COVID isn't real. Nobody has been taking it serious where they're at. And so from their point of view, this is a bit of a hoax, that this is blown out of proportion. It's not that big of a deal. And it's the holidays. And so, of course, they're coming home. And I can't wait to see them. It's been since the family emergency, since we've all been together. And I look forward to it. And at the same time, I'm scared. I'm scared because they don't take it as serious as I do. So that means that they haven't been quarantining for the last week, 2 weeks leading up to them being home. They are around people that, and they don't wear masks. And while they know how possibly deadly this could be for me to get it, and they do say that they will take precautions and, do what they can to keep me safe. They're 20-something-year-old boys that haven't been home to see their friends or girlfriends in a while. And so with them going to be home in a few days, the panic has been setting in that in my house, I don't feel safe. I will be wearing a mask while they're here. one of the boys will be moving back home, so this is going to be a permanent thing moving forward that I can't protect myself from fully. My life could potentially be in a couple people's hands. My husband has been incredibly diligent. His job, he has to work and he is around people, but he always keeps his distance. He's always wearing his mask. He is in the least amount of contact with people that he can be, washing things like obsessively. Like I am very fortunate that he's taken it so serious. And so that's why I haven't been stressed out at home in our bubble. But 2 boys, both have girlfriends. Well, there's 4 times the amount of exposure than right now. They want to hang out with their friends, and while they may say to my face that they'll wear masks, it's hard to believe when you haven't seen masks being worn on social media with these folks at this point. And hearing the stories of how people are becoming infected with COVID, especially in California. So the stories of the people of my community, the clients that I have, my families, friends, all of that. It's small gatherings where people think that they're fine, and then they realize a few days later, oh shit, I got exposed to somebody who tested positive. Oh shit, I'm tested positive. Oh shit, now I've just passed it to my entire household. And I freaked out today because I heard that they wanted to get together for New Year's Eve together. Now, didn't hear how many people were going to be there. Literally could be the 2 boys and their 2 girlfriends, but I'm making assumptions without knowing that there will be more people, like their friends that they haven't seen in a while. There's going to be drinking, there's going to be eating, there's going to be no way that everyone will be wearing masks at all times and staying 6 feet away from each other. There's just not. And panic set in today. And my experience today with the panic was I'm not safe in my own home. But the shadow work for me was the belief that my health, my life, my safety was far less important to my husband and my 2 stepchildren than how inconvenienced they may be if they were to follow the stay-at-home order, the social distancing, the mask wearing, any of that stuff. If they were to not be fully diligent with that they can bring it home and infect me. And then, of course, possibly kill me. And if not kill me, then maybe I have a lifelong worse disease than chronic pain from lung collapses, which not fun already. And the big shadow work for me was they just don't care. Selfishly, they don't want to be inconvenienced. They don't want to be forced to not see their friends or do the things that they want to do, or go into the home, our home, and wear a mask around me. And so I had to really think hard after I had a fucking meltdown, and I did. I literally yelped out loud. Maybe it was a scream at the top of my head, like, ah! Throwing down a knife in the middle of trying to prepare dinner, because I kept feeling like my health was an inconvenience to my husband and stepkids. And it pissed me off because it made me feel like I wasn't important. That them having a few days or a few weeks of fun could cost me greatly. And that all the fucking sacrifices I have made over 8 years to love and care for these 3 beings. And I'm asking for a small sacrifice for a few weeks, even a few months, to just keep it with your girlfriends. And that's it. Like nobody else. Like just don't physically be around anyone else. You know, their mom is a nurse and is around COVID. And so that's another uncontrollable variable, is that now they're going to be going from house to house. And so if she happens to catch it at work, then she could infect the boys, and the boys could then come and infect me. You know, and all these extra variables I don't have control over. And so as I was panicking and trying to talk to my husband, and he's like, I don't know what you want from me. How do you want me to fix this? What do you want me to do? And then my girlfriends are like, what control do you have at this point? Let it go. Just don't stress about this. And it's like, I get it. I know that is a piece, is that I'm going to have to let it go and just say that if this is my fate, it was going to happen whether the boys give it to me or not. And if the boys do end up giving it to me or my husband, then it was all of our fate to have this joint experience, to teach us all something. I don't want that though. I don't want that. I don't want that. And so the shadow work for me is feeling like I'm not important enough. I'm ignored. I'm an inconvenience to somebody, which goes back to my childhood of feeling like nobody wanted to play with me, nobody wanted to hang out with me. I felt lonely. I felt ignored when I tried to spend time with my family, and they were like, nope, too busy, nope, doing this, nope, no interest, nope, 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 nope. They were all in their own different world and bubbles, and it was just, no, you're not important enough. And that's what this felt like, 3 people saying you're not important enough. The other part of my shadow work is the people-pleasing part of me, because there's a part of me that says, well, I don't want to inconvenience my husband and stepkids, right? I don't want to ask them to go out of their way for my health. Who am I to ask them to not see their friends when it's their first time home since, the beginning of the year, because they haven't been able to travel because of COVID? Who am I to ask my husband to have boundaries with the kids, to say, hey, at least have our bedroom off limits, right? Like that should be the one place where I can not have to wear my mask comfortably. Because let me tell you, when I had to travel for an emergency, I did wear my mask all day, every day. And it is so inconvenient to wear a mask, as many of you, if not all of you already know, for 8, 10, 12 hours. I want one safe space to go, to just be able to take my mask off and breathe freely in my own fucking house. Then the thought of, well, if I talk to my stepkids and explain with my heart, asking them to make some sacrifices for me and my health, am I pushing them away from me? Am I having them be like, wow, she just marries my dad and now she's, a bitch, or she's controlling, or she's demanding? Yeah, those thoughts are coming through my head, that me asking for my needs to be met or to make small sacrifices for my health and well-being, which I think are valid. I know are valid. I know are fucking valid. That I'm ruining all 8 years of work I've put into this relationship. But then again, if that's how fragile this relationship is with either my husband or my stepkids, then I guess the foundation really wasn't as solid as I had hoped over 8 years. And maybe that's a hard fucking truth I don't want to see. It hurts to think that I have to fight at all. And maybe the fight is in my head. And maybe I'm making this all in my head bigger than it actually is. And that's another shadow I have to face. I don't know how this is going to play out. I did see what happened, though, when we traveled, and I was the only one, myself and their mother, who actually took it pretty serious. Everyone else, yes, including my husband, who I love dearly, didn't take it as serious. Nobody wore a mask around me except for their mother, who was in the medical field. Everyone was sharing drinks and food and vapes and everything else you can think of, all sitting close to one another. So it was like, well, all the hard work I do, I go to bed and I lay right next to my husband, so I'm going to get it if he gets it. And if he kisses me, I'm done for. And we kiss every day, so I'm going to get it. So, fuck, man, there's a level of no control that I have over this entire fucking thing. The only control I have, to be quite honest, which I don't know is the best option, but it's one that I will have to at least think about, because I think that part of the shadow I do have to face is my people-pleasing nature of I don't want to be an inconvenience to others, so therefore I will just suck it up, feel powerless, and let everyone else be in control of my fate. So I will genuinely have to consider whether or not I will have to leave my home. And I may have to leave the home simply for the couple of weeks that they're home for Christmas. But I may also have to leave my home for several months until I could get vaccinated. Because if I truly feel in my body and in my gut that that's what I have to do to keep myself safe, and I have to, what I feel like is be punished, right? I have to go isolate myself because 1, 2, or 3 people or more, because granted, remember, each variable that comes in has contact with other variables that are contacting other variables. So the number of people who could technically come in and infect my space could be numerous, because I don't know who is hanging with the people that are hanging with my stepkids. Anyway, I digress yet again. But I'm going to have to think about it. I have a few days to figure it out. They may come home and literally only see their girlfriends, and their girlfriends may be taking this very serious, and they may only see their family too. And so maybe it's these very tight little baby bubbles of contact, and I'll be fine. So maybe it's all in my head that they really do care, and that they really are willing to make these sacrifices for me because they really do love me. Maybe. I really hope that that's what I learn at the end of this, is that all 3 of these people that I love so much and have done so much for the last 8 years will look at me and say, Lindsay, you're worth it. You're worth it. You're worth making decent sized sacrifices to make sure that you're safe and you're healthy. Maybe they will. And maybe the lesson is that if I'm not important enough to make these sacrifices, that maybe I, for once, have to say, I'm willing to look like the bad guy. I'm willing to look like
the freak. I'm willing to look like the paranoid person. And I'm willing to be alone for weeks or months while everyone else lives their life and has fun. And I'll be cooped up in either a hotel or an apartment, feeling alone and rejected, because that's my shadow work, is feeling rejected, like I'm not worth it, because I would do it for them in a heartbeat. I would do it for them in a heartbeat. I have sacrificed so much for all three of them. And even if it's just for my peace of mind, so that I'm not stressed out every day, or so that I want to embrace them or sit next to them or be around them, I would do that for them. Every single one of them I would do that for, just to help them feel better. Even if I thought it was all bullshit, I would do that. And my shadow work is, I don't think that will be reciprocated. I guess time will tell. And I have work to do. So I was going to tonight sit with this, and my goal is that when I do sit with this, my plan will be to maybe turn on music or a show to get the feelings flowing, if I don't feel like doing it after this podcast is over, and look at worst case scenario. They come home, they tell me to my face, nope, you're not worth it, right? Fuck off, we're gonna go party, blah, 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 right? Because that's worst case scenario. I'm not looking at realistic, looking at absolute worst case thing that could happen. Then once I play that out and I feel it and I cry and I sob, maybe even bang my fists against the bed, get mad that I'm not worth it to them. Then the next scenario I play out is I catch COVID. And I look at what that would feel like to not be able to breathe again. I go into what it would feel like to be in the hospital alone, knowing that I'm dying and nobody can come into the hospital to be with me as I die. And maybe to really go into the shadow, I go into the hospital and nobody even wants to call me, because that is the even worst case scenario, is I die alone with people knowing and not caring. That's the most painful one. They don't care that they give it to me, and then they don't care that I'm dying alone. And I've heard what it's like to be in those ICUs, dying, can't breathe. And so that's where I have to go. Because if I can face that, if I can feel what it would feel like to have the three people that I have sacrificed so much for in the last 8 years to love unconditionally, as humanly possible. And what if they end up saying that a few hours or days or weeks of fun is more important than my life? And then I have to deal with it on my own as I die in a hospital with strangers, and that nobody cares. So yeah, that's where I have to go, so that I can transmute this belief that people don't care, that I'm not worth a little bit of a sacrifice, that I don't want to be an inconvenience to anybody, no matter what. That people genuinely will never love me. Genuine love, not this bullshit, I love you because you're nice to me. Love me when I'm not great. That's true love. Hold me when I'm flailing, because I am freaking the fuck out. Ostracize me because I decide to put my health first is my fear. So we shall see. I have work to do, and I'm sure once this is over, I'll have another layer. Whew. Anyway, that's a lot. So, folks, I will leave here because I need to go blow my nose, and y'all don't need to hear that shit. And maybe I'll go do a little shadow work. Maybe this is enough for today. It's getting late. I love you all. Be kind to one another. And remember that when you see somebody hurting or hurting you, it's just hurt people that need kindness. We all need to be kind to one another. Far more kind. Don't put up with shit, but we all need to be more kind, okay? I remember how to say it this week. But remember that you are the light. Good night.
Thank you all so much for listening to this podcast. It really means the world to me. And if you find this information and content useful, please go rate and review the podcast and share it with anyone that you think might also benefit from this content. On Instagram, my handle is the Intuitive Psychologist 111, all underscore. And on there you will see I've got inspirational messages to share. And on Wednesdays at 1:30 Pacific Standard Time, I will go on and either do a live guided meditation or present a specific topic ahead of time. You can submit your questions and I will answer them live along with any questions that you have on the live chat. So that's been a really fun place to get a lot of interaction from my listeners and followers. If you've got any questions, comments, concerns, topic ideas, guests you'd like to return, please feel free to email me. My email is intuitive.psych.111@gmail.com. So that is intuitive.psych, which is spelled PSYCH.111@gmail.com. If you're looking to work with me and you would like to have some assistance during the early stages of a spiritual awakening or any sort of early stages of coming into your spirituality, please feel free to look at my website. My website is intuitivepsych.com, intuitivepsych.com. And you can book a free 30-minute consultation to let me know what you're looking for and make sure that I am the best person to help you out. If you're in California and you're looking for spiritual therapy, feel free to also email me at the same email intuitive.psych.111@gmail.com. And again, you will get a free 30-minute consultation to see if your mental health needs and my services are a good fit. So, again, thank you all so much for your support, your interactions, and just moving the conversation forward and continuing to give back in any way that you can. Not just for me, but just for everybody out there. Don't forget, folks, you are the light.